This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. In this week's In-Ear Insights, Lee asks the very interesting question: how do you answer a business leader when they ask for numbers that don't exist? This was a conversation we were having a while back, and he had said, a marketing leader like your CMO or CEO might say, Katie, I need the ROI of our marketing. And we know there's a lot that goes into that seemingly simple computation. Or what's the value of our brand? Give me a number for the value of our brand. And again, these are things that are knowable, but they're not things that you necessarily will have on hand without doing a lot of work and spending a decent amount of budget to get them. So, Katie, when you, as a business leader, hear this question, how would you answer Lee's question? How do you answer when they ask for numbers that you don't have, they don't exist?
Well, I would say the first thing to not do is to respond to your business leader and go, yeah, no, that doesn't exist. Try again. So that's probably a bad move. Because theoretically, someone who's in that leadership position should have some awareness of what goes into that. And so I think, if, Chris, I were asking you, what is the ROI of our marketing? My expectation would be, okay, let's get a better understanding of that customer lifetime value and sort of what all of those metrics are that go into, basically getting people in the door to buy something. So really the question that I'm trying to answer is, how much does it cost from our marketing? Like, how much does our marketing cost to get someone to buy something? And that's really customer lifetime value. What is the value of our brand? Well, that starts to get into, awareness, and how much does it cost, soft and hard dollars to get people to our website. And so what is the value of the traffic? And so again, to me, those two questions come down to breaking down that customer lifetime value formula of, the different stages of your sales funnel of, how much is traffic worth, how much are prospects worth, and leads and qualified leads, and sort of breaking it down that way. My assumption is that that's really what somebody wants to know, so that they can sort of see, how much does each stage of my sales funnel cost? What is the value of it? What is one single person coming to my website worth? Is it worth $100? Is it worth $10 million? Like, that's a great thing to know. So you want to get more awareness. So that's sort of where my brain goes. I know you've been asked this question a lot, in your career as well. What is your initial reaction to it?
Today, I actually borrow a page from your book, which is, okay, what decisions are you going to make with this? Like, what, how does this fit into the process and the strategy? Because if you're just asking for information just out of curiosity, then sure, we can find that information, but it's going to go at the bottom of the list, and I know that you're going to forget about it in 15 days and ask, come up with some other odd request that we can safely ignore. It's kind of like parenting, like in some ways, when your kid asks for, I want this to eat, like, well, are you going to actually eat that? Like, just because it looks cool on, the little smart screen that's, always flashing in the kitchen, are you actually going to eat that if I make it? The kid says no. Well, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make it for you because it's a waste of everybody's time. I remember my kids saw like zucchini something something cakes, some like another recipe to hide vegetables, for your kids. He's like, I want to try that. Like, are you actually gonna eat that if I make that? Because it's filled with zucchini and you don't like zucchini. I'm like, no, but it looks cool. I'm like, well, cool. When you have your own house someday, you can cook it. And I think that's when you hear something like brand equity or ROI, that's essentially that person saying, here's the recipe I want you to cook, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, do we have the ingredients? Do we have the skills and the people? Do we have the tools? Right? Because it's great to say, yeah, I want this recipe, but if we don't have the ingredients, we don't have the tools, we don't know how to cook it, then we're going to serve you something that might look a little bit like what you intended, but isn't. Like, yeah, we made this cake. It's made out of sand because that's all we had.
That's a
Wouldn't
really
be very,
disappointing cake.
it'd be a very disappointing cake. We get these really clean though. And so that's sort of the two-part approaches that I would take is, okay, what decisions you're going to make? Because if you're just trying to make a decision about Like, hey, we're dumping a lot of money into Facebook ads. And is it worth it? You might not necessarily need ROI for that. You might be able to just use return on ad spend as a
Mhm.
computation. Say like, yeah, this has got some terrible return on ad spend. On the other hand, if you're trying to do an apples to apples between Facebook and your email marketing, then yeah, you're probably going to have to do return on investment because email marketing has a lot more soft dollars that go into it than Facebook ads do. So that's that. I guess the approach that I would take. Now we have been in situations, working at past companies where an executive has said, "Yeah, I want this," and you can ask those questions. The executive's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I still want it." And at
Mhm.
that point, then you have to start going, "Okay, well, how are we going to come up with this thing that they want that we know they're probably not going to use, not even understand, but they're the boss."
Right. Well, and so as you're describing, this process that you would go through, I think it's, you know, it's funny because you're describing the story with your son of, are you going to eat it? And your son says no. That's a heck of a lot of self-awareness for your son to have at a very young age. And we're sort of making the leap to say that a lot of people asking these questions have that self-awareness and that confidence to say, no, I'm not actually going to use it. I just want to know what it is. I don't see that happening a lot,
Hmm.
because then do you even really know what you're talking about, or do you really know what you're asking? That's sort of the unsaid part of the conversation. And so when someone asks you something like, what is the ROI of our marketing? Make sure if you're the person being asked, make sure you approach it, tactfully and respectfully and say things like, can you please be a little bit more specific? Do you mean, a specific channel of our marketing or our marketing overall? Trying to pull out some of that clarity because the person asking may not really, to your point, Chris, may not really know what they're asking and may say, but I want it. Or it may even be something, from above them, maybe the shareholders want to know what's the ROI of your marketing? So they weren't clear on the thing. It's the opportunity to have that conversation of, can you clarify what it is that you're asking? I think these are the following things that you're looking for. Provide solutions and say, I'm able to get you the return on ad spend from our Facebook account. I'm able to get you some of the return on investment from our email marketing. Is that what you're looking for? And so, if you're talking with someone who you don't think even really knows what they're asking, start there, ask for more specifics, offer them some solutions, give them options to pick from. And if it's still not quite right, then, you can start to dig in a little bit deeper. But remember, the person just may not know, and pointing that out to them is definitely not going to go a long way to getting what you need to answer that question.
I think your self awareness point is really important because I think there's also a component of that is missing for us too as marketers. Do we understand the difference between ROI and ROAS, and not just the mathematical distinction, but when do you use this thing? Like, what
Mhm,
is this thing used for? ROI is effectively what is the cost of profit, right? How much does it cost to make profit? Whereas return on ad spend is a much simpler computation, which is just
mhm,
how efficient is our ad spend. So they have very different applications, and it may not be one of those things where you might understand the implementation, how you
mhm,
calculate ROI, but not necessarily what you use it for or how it works or why it exists. Kind of like you don't really question why there's a blender in your kitchen. It's just kind of there. It's one of those appliances that we all seem to buy. We don't really think, oh, what functions does it serve? And you spend some time with it and go, oh, actually, it can do all these other things too. So it's kind of a handy thing to have around. So in your conversations with other marketers and things, do you feel like they have a good sense of awareness of what all the different metrics and tools are available to them and what they do?
not necessarily, and it's not for lack of trying. I think that, there's no universal set of metrics in the digital marketing space, and that's, unfortunate. It really comes down to what platforms and, what tools and systems and what goals. The most universal you can get are the ones we're talking about of like what's return on ad spend, what's the ROI, what's the click through rate, what's the engagement number. But even then, when you break it down platform by platform, it's going to be a little bit different. There's general calculations. I actually think we as marketers spend too much time being concerned about what other people are doing instead of just focusing on what's important to us. And I think, Chris, we were having this conversation on a recent podcast. I don't remember the exact context, but basically, oh, it was around industry trends and being a little bit too concerned about, well, what's the benchmark for the industry? If the B2B industry, if their return on ad spend of marketing is 20%, then I want 20% return on investment for my marketing. Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think that that's also part of the conversation. If you're being asked to pull these numbers out, trying to understand, well, did you see a number somewhere that said that there's a benchmark? What are you trying to measure this against? Like, those kinds of questions. At least I would find it to be super helpful to understand where the conversation started. But back to your original question, Chris, do we as marketers know all of the different things that are available? Absolutely not, because new things are being built on a regular basis. I mean, we just went through the whole Clubhouse era, when people were locked down in the pandemic. But I don't know that there was anything measurable from that. But a lot of companies said, I need to get in on that. And the question was why? And then how do you measure that? And it's just this constant chasing of new software.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when folks are asking for numbers that don't exist, I think your industry benchmarks one is a great example because a lot of the time people say like, yeah, what's the industry average for Facebook ads? For what industry? And there's so many problems with that statement. Like, we're in consulting. It would be absolutely ridiculous for us to be comparing ourselves to, say, Accenture, right? Accenture's cream cheese budget is probably larger than our overall revenue as a company, right? It's such a massive institution. And so even an industry average there is not going to be particularly meaningful. However, if you have an executive who's saying, I need, get me this number, uh, clearly the worst thing you can do is just make something up.
Hmm.
Probably the second worst thing is to Google for 2 seconds, find the first number that comes up in the results, just copy paste that to a presentation and hope nobody notices, which I know a lot of people have done. But what do we do? Like what, in the case of a board member or a CEO that is maybe a little more resistant to change or to digging in themselves,
Hmm.
how do you handle somebody like that? It's like, nope, I need this number. Get me this number.
Wow, you're describing like the first 15 years of my career. Um, I had some tricky stakeholders, but I eventually won them over. So what you do is you set realistic expectations and you ask very specific questions. When do you need this by? What is the timeline? Okay, you need this tomorrow. What I can do for you tomorrow is I can put together a plan of how I'm going to approach this. And here's why it needs a plan. And so just not in a way that you're speaking down or being condescending, but just being realistic. Like, okay, you want to know the return on investment of our marketing and you want to know what it is by tomorrow. Here's what I need to do. First of all, I need to let my teams know that I can no longer help them manage the clients because I need to focus on this because it sounds like this is your top priority. The second thing is I need to collect information around what we have access to in terms of our different software systems. And I can list those out for you and tell you what metrics are available. That's the best that I can do for you by tomorrow. Is that acceptable? If they say no, be like, okay, let's talk about some other solutions and really try to go into problem solving mode instead of defensive. Well, that's unrealistic. I can't do that for you because that's not going to make anyone feel better. So that was how I used to and still do approach those kinds of questions when I feel like the person who's asking me is being unrealistic. I really try to break it down into those milestones. Like, okay, if I can put a plan together and then you can commit to being available to read and accept and give me feedback on the plan by this date, then I can move on to the next phase of the thing, which is to actually pull the data and start doing the calculations. And that's likely going to take me a couple of days but I can have you a draft of that by the end of the week. If you can then commit to by the end of the week taking a look at my draft. And so making sure that there's accountability on both sides, not just, okay, you need this by tomorrow, I'm going to deliver it by tomorrow, and then peace out. Because what's going to happen in that situation is you will pull an all-nighter, you'll drop everything else, you'll pull this thing together, and then it's going to sit in someone's inbox for the next 15 days. And then they're going to say, where's that thing? No, this is all wrong. No, I need you to do it again. Set yourself up for success and try to avoid some of that headache by making sure whatever the thing is being asked is a two-way street, that the person asking is also responsible for the success of the question being answered.
It almost sounds like you're intentionally putting a few speed bumps in the process so that they have to slow down and think about what it is that they're asking for.
A little bit. I wouldn't necessarily phrase it that way because you're not, well, I guess no, you're right. You are trying to get them to slow down and think about it a bit. But also by getting them engaged and participating in the process, you are more likely going to get them to the answer that they're actually looking for, other than something that they just arbitrarily drop on you. You kind of fudge your way through it and then give them something, and they say, well, no, that wasn't what I was looking for at all. And there was never that conversation of, well, what are you looking for? You might even say, okay, I hear what you're asking. Can I schedule some time with you a little bit later on today to sort of walk through some more in depth questions, some business requirements, gather more information? Because I want to make sure that I'm handing you back exactly what it is that you're looking for, and that neither of us feel like our time is being wasted. And so, really, again, it's sort of holding the other person accountable to give you more information if the ask is not clear.
Right. So that when they inevitably ask you for something that does not exist, and you crap something, they've signed off on it. They can't argue about its existence.
Yes. And so that's sort of the other piece of it is when you get sign off, and this was actually, I was notorious for this, and my old stakeholders, I wouldn't say they hated me, but they really resented me a lot of times because I would actually go around and get physical sign off. And obviously, with everyone being remote, that's a little bit more tricky. But I would get people to physically sign the sign off sheet of the thing that they were asking and say, this is what you've asked for. Here's what I'm going to deliver. And I would get them to physically sign it and date it. So when we got to the next meeting and I presented the thing and someone said, well, that's not what I wanted, in a respectful manner, I would throw the piece of paper back in their face and say, actually, you signed off on this right here on this date at this time. And so if this is not what you wanted, then you should not have signed off on this thing. So the train's already moving. We have to stop what we're doing. This is going to cost us money. This is going to cost us time if you want to make this change. Is it worth it to you to make this change and make the other six stakeholders have to wait? And so obviously, like I'm paraphrasing, it was never, well, I guess some days it was that brutal, but it was never really disrespectful. It was done in a way to not only protect myself and my team, but also to protect them, the stakeholders, their budgets, their time, and to remind them, here's what you said you asked for. Because, Chris, to your point, a lot of times you might get asked a question and then, as soon as they've asked it, they move on to the next thing and forgotten that they've asked for the thing, but they've made it seem like to you that this is the biggest priority that they absolutely have right this second. And so getting that extra clarity helps make sure that, everybody's on the same page about when it's going to get done and how important is it really.
Exactly. I like the opportunity cost angle too, because it makes it very clear if you do this, then you can't have that. I know
Right.
we've had a number of discussions with clients saying, yes, we can do that. And it will cost you X number of dollars, right? And in this case, it's a hard dollar cost.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how quickly a lot of those requests go away when they say, I'm sorry, yes, we can do that. It will
Hmm.
cost you $75,000 to have that. Is it worth $75,000? Occasionally, the client says, yes, it is. Pile of
Hmm.
money appears and we do the thing. Most of the time, people are like, I didn't realize it was that expensive.
Hmm.
And they say, okay, maybe we can wait on that. Um, and I think that's a really good way for people, especially inside of an organization, to be able to say, like, yes, it's going to cost you, if you know, for example, on average, marketing generates, $5 million of business for the company a year. You figure out, what that works out to as an hourly rate as a department. It's $1,000 an hour or
Hmm.
$5,000 an hour. Say this project's going to cost 10 hours of time. Is it worth $50,000 of revenue to you? Because if we spend the 10 hours of time on this, we can't be working on the thing that makes the money. So internally, is it worth that cost? I like that because it's not a no answer.
Right.
It's a you decide.
Yep. We did that a lot when I was managing the engineering team, the development team. That was often a conversation we would need to have. And so, if you know about software engineering, you know that it's really tricky when they've already started a project to back it out and start something else. There's obviously ways to do it. You know, you branch off the code, you merge it back in, but that still takes time and it still takes QA resources, and it still takes some planning. And so that was a conversation that I think I was having with the stakeholders on a daily basis on behalf of my engineering team, because they would change their mind on a daily basis about the thing that they wanted, and the team would already be working on something. And so that was part of, our agile planning, our sprint planning was sort of those 2 week sprints so that there was something, deliverable at the end of those 2 weeks, and that stakeholders felt like they weren't waiting months and months and months to get their thing in. But Chris, to your point, it was always a trade off. Like, okay, so now we're doing the sprint planning for the next set of things that we're going to build. You want your thing. So your thing is estimated to take about 4 hours. Here are the other things that are also going to take 4 hours. What of this list do you not want to see get done in order to get your thing in? And that's exactly it. You don't say no, you present them with options and you help them decide, okay, my thing's not that important. We actually really need to do fix the website because it's broken and nobody can buy anything, but me changing the button from green to blue probably isn't as important as that other thing. And so helping people also see sort of the big picture of where their ask fits in so that they can help give that sense of priority. And you're also, by making them that decision maker, again, they're engaged, they're part of the process, and you're not taking the power away from them by just making the decision for them. Be like, no, I can't do that. Like, keep the power with them, let them make the decision, and they'll feel more uh, engaged with the process as a whole.
Mhm. What about the rare situation where this what the person's asking for simply does not exist and will not exist? Like it is literally impossible for that thing to hear. That said, someone comes to you and says, "I would like a car that flies," or the marketing equivalent. How do you handle someone who has just thoroughly unrealistic expectations or has absolutely no idea what it is they're asking for?
I, it happens, and I've been in that situation a lot. And I think that you take that same approach. Be like, okay, let's talk through some of your business requirements of what it is that you're actually after. Like, don't like it's not helpful to just go ahead and say no, that doesn't exist, because for all we know, a flying car is possible. We just don't have the resources. And helping someone understand the limitations of you and your team and what you would need to accomplish that ask is actually a very powerful conversation, because they might say, okay, well, I've been sitting on this $1 million and I'm going to unlock it for you to go ahead and do the thing. Like, oh, okay, so you're really passionate about a flying car. So let's go ahead and build the thing. And then your responsibility is to start to outline, here's what I need in order to get this thing done. I need a whole team of engineers that we currently don't have because we sell cupcakes. But okay, let's go ahead and find those people. Um, and so just again, sort of making sure that you're having that conversation, being curious, asking them more questions, getting clarity. And so if you already know in the back of your mind the thing doesn't exist. So let's say I said to you, Chris, um, I don't know, this is going to be a terrible example,
We
but
use
let's
brand
say,
equity. Brand equity is a very popular question.
okay, let's say I said to you, what is the brand equity? My expectation in the context of this conversation is you would come to me and say, okay, I understand you want to understand how aware is our audience of our brand? Is that correct? So starting to break down the question and phrase it different ways that you can find numbers for. And they may be like, oh yeah, that's what I meant. Or no, I want to know the brand equity. Be like, okay, so typically brand equity means this. We do not currently have the data to pull that. However, this is what we need to do to get the data, and this is how long pulling that data or collecting that data would take. Do you want to go down that route? So, again, not straight out saying no, but helping the person who's asking the question understand the limitations you currently have. And so, if I ask you, what's our brand equity? You can say, well, we don't currently have any of that information. Here's the information we would need in order to understand the answer to that question. Do you still want to proceed?
Right. Yeah, that's good because it also helps you clarify. Do you want to know brand equity just as a marketplace benchmark, or do you want to know brand equity for acquisition purposes? Do you want the company to get acquired? And there's a bunch of different ways to do that computation. So,
Right.
uh, I guess to wrap up Lee's question, yeah, it comes down to, does it exist? Right? If you're being asked for a number that does exist, doesn't exist? Does it exist and you just don't have access to the data, or do you need to get the data? Or does it flat out not exist, period, and it's something that you might have to create? Get your stakeholder buy-in, preferably in writing, with
Yes.
all the requirements, and get them to make the decisions about what the cost is going to be, what you're going to have to give up in order to pursue the thing that they want. Because sometimes they may say, yes, I absolutely positively want this, or the board has authorized this and has authorized X number of dollars to do it. And you might be surprised. It might lead to some of the most interesting work you've done in your career.
Hmm.
Any final thoughts, Katie?
Yeah. So just remember, a verbal agreement does not hold up in court or a marketing meeting.
Wise words. If you got questions on anything we've talked about in today's episode, hop on over to our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where you can have this discussion and many more with our community of over 1,900 marketers. And wherever it is that you are watching or listening to the show, chances are it's on a channel that works best for you. Go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast to see all the places that the show is published. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Need help making your marketing platforms, processes, and people work smarter? Visit trustinsights.ai today and learn how we can help you deliver more impact.